Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Brian Vendig, who's the president of MJP Wealth Advisors. Brian, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much. Happy to be with you.
Hey, I've really been looking in your background, your bio, and all the places that people come to you as seeking advice from Bloomberg and, Yahoo Finance. So I'm really excited to hear some of your relevant topics that we're going to talk about today. So I just want to kind of jump right into the economy that we're dealing in right now. You can just flip a coin and go, okay, what's today going to be and what's today going to bring? And just, boy, we don't know until we roll up our sleeves, dive in and go, okay, what do we do? And what I would love to see is some of your insights on what we're dealing with the economy today with volatility. And then from the client's perspective, how they can kind of look at it from afar and realize Brian and his team have it put together, but it's nice to understand some of these things, but not a cause for, panic.
Thanks, Mike. I think that's a great way to set it up and really captures the heart of what people are thinking. And I think at the end of the day, we're all reflective in the sense of what are we dealing with the short term and then thinking out where could things go. And over the last couple of years, with just the impact of the pandemic on the global economy that has caused so much disruption, I think now that we're starting to hopefully see, the end of the pandemic and at some point in the future, a more optimistic views that we're going to be moving into an area where we're just learning how to live with this virus. I think we're starting to see that now in the financial markets as well, in the sense that change is happening and it's causing investors to have concern. And so what do I mean by that? I mean that when you start a new year off and you see that, markets can go up and down during just a one-day trading session of 1,000 points, Mike, that we haven't seen since March of 2020 when the pandemic hit, or even back in the '08 financial crisis, really causes investors to say, well, wait a second, what does risk mean? Am I taking the right calculated risk with my portfolios? Am I thinking about my investments correctly over the right time frame? Because obviously, if income levels change at home or the time frame of the investments are short, you probably don't want to take too much risk. And I think it's reminding people that the stock market is not gambling, right? It's not speculation. Yeah, there's aspects of that market, that definitely exists. Speculation always exists, but we want to avoid that when you think about moving into this year. And I think what people need to realize is that over the last couple of years, about $30 trillion globally has been added to financial systems around the world. Leverage. Right? So you think about the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates low. You think about other bankers in other countries doing the same to stimulate growth, to help asset prices appreciate, to make things easier for people to get a loan or to afford, a piece of property or things, right? Or a car. Then you think about the government, right? Our government provided all this fiscal aid to help people get back on their feet as they've been disrupted by the pandemic. And as a result of doing that, that's a very accommodative environment. So the stock market reacted favorably in 2020 and 2021. But now as we start this year, there's less of that support coming because the Federal Reserve is now saying, well, wait a second, the economy's in a lot better place and we have this thing that we have to worry about, which is called inflation, right? So you go to the grocery store. Exactly. You go to the grocery store, I'm sure it's costing a little more today than it did 2 years ago, right? And so as a result, the Federal Reserve is required to combat inflation to help to support and preserve purchasing power. So now they're talking about increasing interest rates, and this accommodation is coming out of the market. And because the path forward and the way that they're communicating isn't 100% certain, no one really knows exactly how many rate increases are going to happen this year. And there's some other measures they might take to kind of combat the knock-on effect of coming out of the pandemic is causing investor concern. And of course, geopolitical events in the short term with Russia and Ukraine isn't helping as well.
Yeah.
But I think what we're trying to tell clients and investors is that when you look back at things historically, when you're making investments in stocks or equities, there's a behavior, there's a pattern that happens because, again, human beings are making decisions about where things are going to go in the future for companies, right? Our company's going to continue to be profitable and grow, and as a result, my investment can grow. But when you look at history going back, volatility in a market is normal. And usually on average, stocks go down 5% or more every 3 to 4 months. And that's a trend that's been going on since the late 40s. And sometimes you have a period of time like January of this year where stocks can go down 10% or more, which is called a correction. That happens sometimes every year and a half. So right now, when we look at the situation, because there's an absence of direction of some of these accommodative policies that might be changing over the course of the year, it's not surprising that investors are kind of taking a pause in thinking about risk. But when you look at the underlying economy, we're in good shape. We have a good housing market, a healthy consumer. We have people that are talking about getting back into the workforce. We know that we all would love to travel and go somewhere soon, right? So the services part of the economy hasn't fully reopened last year, and I think there's a possibility that it will this year.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do with our clients is just educating people. What are the choices? What does risk mean? And what are some of the different options that you can invest in to hedge for inflation, to get some appreciation from equities or stocks, but then also to take advantage of some conservative investments to mitigate volatility. So I think the story is that you got to have the right guidance and also the right awareness of your objectives. And from there, putting 2 and 2 together, you'll probably get an outcome that is more favorable than just reacting to the news and possibly making the wrong decision in the short term. So hopefully that makes sense, Mike.
It totally does. And a couple of the things that stood out to me were, there's the foundation is solid. Like if you come outside your house and you notice cracks and it's on the foundation, that could be a really big problem. So if the foundation is solid, like you've mentioned, then there's going to be some gyrations and some movements. And maybe there would be some opportunities with, like maybe you mentioned the travel industry or the hospitality industry that have been hit over the last couple of years. Maybe if we start seeing signs that comes back, we can make a little shift to move a little bit into that and away from another one that might be taking a hit. Those are the kind of things that people like yourself watch for and that clients need to sit back and go, you know what? Brian's got it. Good. Thank you. Appreciate that update. That makes sense. Makes me feel better. And it makes me think of something because we mentioned the pandemic, and that's something that if you can put a pin in, the timeline of the last few years, that was an event that happened. But then there's other pins in timelines in years past, like the economic crisis of 2007, 8, 9, 10, and many of those years. And then, all of those things. Well, you move through it. And you adjust, and then the next thing pops up like what we're dealing with now. Well, many people realize this, but I think they need to frame it in their mind. In a handful of years or a period of time, air quotes, quote unquote, the next thing is going to pop up. So the same kinds of approaches need to be taken, which is calmly assess, don't react, and watch for opportunity because it's like the seesaw. When one market or sector goes down, something else on the other side is going up. So you need to rely on the trustworthy advice like what you guys are providing your clients to kind of navigate through. So talk a little bit about how that mentality is how we can really reflect on backwards and as we're currently moving through the pandemic to maybe help solidify things moving forward for the future.
Absolutely, Mike. So I think what comes to mind is I call it a life cycle plan or a wealth plan, and that means that we're not just making it about the investments and trying to just understand the risk and rewards and the allocations as you're mentioning, but we're also thinking about what the objectives are, what our tolerance is for risk and what that means, but then also building out some lifestyle and cycle choices to support those plans. So, for example, the pandemic hits and causes disruption for those that had some emergency funds to fall back on, as maybe going through a job transition or helping to support a change in living expenses, makes sense, something that you want to do. So having the ability to say, do I have a couple months to 6 months of income tucked aside for that unknown that might come up down the road? I think people realize recently that probably makes sense. You always want to have a little bit of backup assets, and we're not just putting everything into, a retirement account or an investing account. I think the other thing that people realize is that, if your health is impacted or where you live is impacted and you have to make changes, then making sure that you're thinking about other types of strategies to make sure that you have an estate plan set up where the right directives and protections are put in place for your family. You're thinking to yourself and saying, am I paying the right amount for insurance? Am I getting the right coverages I need? Or should I be looking at other options that it might be more contemporary for where my life is going, right? The what can go wrong, which I think is what the pandemic has reminded people about, is that they do come up. Just as you said, there's going to be that next thing. But then I think also there's a cultural awareness part of thinking about that life cycle plan. What are we doing today, and what do we want to do tomorrow? And how can we help to enable that, not only in financial process and thinking, but being aware of choices and where you're spending your time. So I like to spend time with clients also talking about not only their financial aspects of their portfolio, but just generally their wellness, right? And making sure that we're making good choices as part of that plan, or to say, hey, I like to travel. That's something that we have as a goal. How can you help me make sure that that's part of the allocation as well? So, I think the big picture point is thinking ahead on some of these things and trying to partner with someone that has your best interest in mind so that you can have a collaborative and open conversation to share ideas. You'll be surprised at where the conversation goes and how much, people are there to help in making decisions around selling a business, a parent that might not be feeling well, how to put the kids through school, how to understand the markets, whatever it may be. That's life. We're all dealing with it, right? Our journeys are similar in some ways, but you also have to respect the differences. And I think those are the things that are real important in trying to communicate that with people.
Yep, I agree. And you mentioned a few of those little bullet points, like putting kids through school and different things like that. And I feel like so many times people have like that, oh, well, if I need to do X, then I must do Y. Putting kids through school, then that means I need to whatever that looks like. But in reality, there could be several domino effect kind of decisions financially that would be made positively or potentially negatively against your retirement if you make the wrong move with some of those things like putting kids through school or weddings or things like that. So I think having someone, like you said, on your side, the trusted advisor, coach, guide kind of a mentality where it's like, hey, Brian, what do I do? My situation. So, we got college coming up in a few years. So should I make this move or that move, or what would happen if? And, it's like the old engineering, IFTTT, if this, then that. Well, if you do this, then here's what will happen. So let's see, should we do that? Well, I don't know. Let's take a look. And so I like that approach that you guys take. And I also know that you guys provide family office services. So talk a little bit about how that benefits your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think all this kind of comes together, and thanks for bringing up that point, Mike, because it's trying to set up, some of the foundation and the building blocks as part of a relationship. So you feel like, going back to your visual there, we have a strong foundation, right? So it's the investing plan, it's the savings plan, the budgeting, doing the tax planning, relating that back to the estate plan, looking at risk management with insurance, but then elevating that to say to clients, you know what, we can also help you in other ways. Help you book luxury travel, help you get through a healthcare issue with an aging parent, helping you buy and sell real estate, acquire a car or a vehicle or another asset, that you want to use. business succession planning, right? Thinking about all aspects of how life plays out and being able to say, you know what, here's a firm, here's a group that I can come to, and they're going to be willing to help if I have a question, versus having to then put together a team of different professionals to help you with individual problem statements, I think is inefficient. So what we're really trying to do with our services overall for our clients is think about how to help them make more efficient and effective decisions on an ongoing basis. And at the same point in time, recognizing that there's conflicts. There's not a perfect solution for every problem. There's always trade-offs, right? If there was a perfect solution for all these things, obviously it would be easy. We'd all be having cocktails with Warren Buffett right now, right?
Yep.
So the point is understanding what those trade-offs are, and going back to what you said before, putting things in the right priorities, but actually basing it on the value system that family, that individual, that business owner cares about. And that's probably the best way I can bring to life the concept of our family office services and how we try to help. But, again, it's tailored. Everybody's different. So you got to be flexible and adaptable to reach people and help them appropriately.
Well, and what you just described there with, making the right decisions for the family and all of that, the thought popped in my mind, and I have a feeling you'll agree with this. That goes way beyond, please fill out this form and get it on the clipboard and get it back to us so we can help you make the right decisions. It is not a fill in the blank checklist and here's your cookie cutter templated financial plan. It is a holistic, let's get to know you, let's know all the ins and outs of, because something that you learn from the family might impact, you mentioned this a couple meetings ago, and now this question you have here, why don't we make this decision? So I think that's the big thing, is that relationship that needs to be built and is built.
Absolutely. I think communication, coordination, being in a place that people feel like they can collaborate, that obviously enables us to do a better job to help somebody. But I think it's also drilling down to the point that I'm trying to make, which is, we're here to advise. We're here to help. We're fiduciaries by law. And we're not making this about us, but at least the client knows that we can be the, Swiss Army knife of advisory services. They can go to us and have everything available, plus more, and all we have to do is explore and make sure we're taking the time to turn over every stone in a logical and systematic fashion. So, keep it simple, but just that there's a depth of expertise and capability, and it's more than just the investing, right? That's the point we're trying to make.
Yeah. Hey, well, I see also on your website that you have a passion for giving back, and I have the same spot on my website of organizations that I support financially and also with time. Talk a little bit about how you guys are supporting organizations and places there in your local area through your firm.
Absolutely, and thanks for noticing. I mean, I think in the spirit of wanting to have a positive impact, in the community, is something that, aligns with our value statement as a firm, and it's very simple from a one-to-one basis. If we're helping people, we also want to go out and help the organizations that are also helping others. So whether it's Family and Children's Agency, which is one of the largest 501c3s in southwestern Connecticut, or being a sponsor at professional events like the Travelers, which then donates a significant amount to charities in the region, or the American Heart Association, Feeding America, local foundations such as the Hoffman Foundation, which supports so many great organizations in Hartford County and Connecticut, to cancer research, Boys and Girls Club, Alzheimer's, you name it, children's hospitals in Connecticut, anywhere that we can help to support a diversified approach, I guess, no pun intended, of giving, is really something that's in the fabric of our company, and I think speaks to volumes in demonstrating that we really care and we're just here to help.
Yeah. Is there any specific way that you decide on because I mean, I'm looking at, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, I mean, many organizations. Do you have a specific way that you go, you know what, here's when we need to start supporting, like as an example, I support some type 1 diabetes research and juvenile diabetes research because one of my daughters was diagnosed 5 years ago with type 1. So it becomes more to your awareness. So do you have, like an affinity toward, kids because, have some family connections, things like that?
Sure. Well, some of these organizations, we have leadership positions in by volunteering time and serving on their board. Other organizations, I think we're just, again, going back to what I said before, trying to think about experiences that our clients have had, experiences that we've had to make sure that we're, not only helping, let's say, cancer research or children, working through healthcare issues, but if, there's also organizations we've donated to in the past around Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and memory care. So we actually make decisions on an ongoing basis relative to interactions that we've had with clients or contemporary topics that we think comes up from a societal perspective. And then, of course, there's some organizations where we're very active on an ongoing basis just because that might be where we volunteer our time. So I wouldn't say there's a set structure, but I think the point I'm trying to make is we want to be insightful and relevant to ongoing topics that are impacting all of us.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a great initiative to have. So let's wrap up, Brian, because you've just laid down some really great content here. What's the best way that people could reach out, connect with your firm, and learn more about what you do, and potentially look at their situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. I think if anybody went to our website, MJPwealthadvisors.com, learned a little bit more about us, sent an email to our general inbox at advice@mjpwealthadvisors.com, a member of our advisory team would reach out, definitely set up an appointment, have a conversation, or just feel free to give us a call, as well. We have a client service team in-house. We pick up the phone. We talk to people as they call in. You don't get put on hold. So we're happy to be there. And I would just say, feel free to reach out or check us out on social media as well. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Follow us. You'll see some of the commentary and some of our contributions in the national media.
Excellent. Well, Brian, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it as well. Appreciate your time.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.